Now I'd like to introduce our two panelists from UC San Diego's Scripps Institution of Oceanography, who will join the Dalai Lama in the discussion of the global impact of climate change. Richard Somerville is a distinguished professor emeritus and an expert in theoretical meteorology and computer simulations of the atmosphere. He's been a strong contributor to our current thoughts of how global warming takes place. You may recognize him because he comments frequently on climate and environmental issues for the media. He was, for example, a coordinating lead author for the 2007 fourth assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which he shared in 2007 as the Nobel Peace Prize, equally with Al Gore. And V. Ramanathan, Ram as he's known, is a distinguished professor of atmospheric and climate sciences. In 1975, he discovered the greenhouse effect of chlorofluorocarbons and continued to press upon the world the large warming effect of pollutants other than carbon dioxide. His lifelong work in part led to the creation this year of a program by Secretary of State Clinton to cut these pollutants to slow down global warming. So first we'll hear from Dr. Somerville.
Thank you, Your Holiness, Chancellor Fox, distinguished visitors, colleagues, UCSD students, friends. Climate has always changed from natural causes, but what is different now in our time is that human activities have become the dominant factor. We people, our generation, today now control what the climate will be for our children and grandchildren. We did not seek this power, but we have it because we have long used the atmosphere as a free dump for the side effects and waste products of human activities. For example, burning coal and oil and natural gas produce carbon dioxide, and as a result, carbon dioxide is about 40% more plentiful in the atmosphere today than it was 150 years ago. Science tells us that the resulting stronger greenhouse effect will have many consequences, including rising temperatures, higher sea levels, altered precipitation patterns, more weather extremes such as floods and droughts and heat waves, and dramatically shrinking glaciers and ice sheets and sea ice. We're already seeing these changes. They're being observed now. The many new high temperature records set in the United States this year and the severe drought that has ravaged parts of this country may well be foretastes of the future. Climate change will strongly affect human beings and ecosystems and ultimately all life on Earth. Recent research findings show that previous projections have not exaggerated the threat of climate change. Indeed, they may have underestimated it. These findings include new measurements showing that the Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets are now losing mass and contributing to sea level rise. Also, Arctic sea ice extent has decreased much more rapidly than had been expected. The problem is getting worse. Current global carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuels are now about 40% higher than they were in 1990. Best current estimates, if emissions continue to rise year after year, are that global sea level rise may exceed 1 meter, about 3 feet, by 2100, with a rise of up to 2 meters, roughly 6 feet, considered possible. In a moment, my colleague, Professor Ramanathan, will discuss important short-lived climate pollutants. I now turn to the challenge of reducing the world's emissions of long-lived heat-trapping gases produced by human activities, of which the most important is carbon dioxide. Because much of the carbon dioxide that human activities emit remains in the atmosphere for centuries, it is the total amount of our global cumulative emissions that matter. Carbon dioxide is also thoroughly mixed by the winds, so the amount of carbon dioxide in the air is nearly the same everywhere. Thus, all of humanity has contributed to the problem, but some countries much more than others, and the entire world will experience the resulting climate change. This fact makes limiting climate change a global challenge. Science cannot say what level of climate change is dangerous. That is a subjective issue involving risk tolerance, values, priorities, and other concerns. But people can decide, and many governments have now adopted the aspirational goal of limiting global warming to 2 degrees Celsius, which is 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit, above the pre-industrial temperatures of the 1800s. Then, once that decision is made, climate science can usefully inform policy decisions by showing what actions are needed to give the world a reasonable chance of meeting that goal. It will not be easy to limit climate change to moderate levels. We have already observed substantial warming. If today's emission rates continue without change, not increasing, then after just 20 more years, the world will no longer have a reasonable chance of limiting warming to the target of less than 2 degrees Celsius or 3.6 Fahrenheit. To meet this goal, science tells us, science didn't set the goal, but it helps let us know what we have to do to meet it. Science tells us that global greenhouse gas emissions, the rate at which we're putting carbon dioxide and the other gases into the atmosphere, must peak within the next 5 to 10 years, and then start to decline rapidly, reaching near zero well within this century. The case for urgency in taking meaningful actions to reduce emissions is thus scientific, not ideological or political. If the world continues to procrastinate and emissions globally continue unabated for another 10 years, then science predicts the window will have closed, and the opportunity to limit warming to 2 degrees Celsius will be lost. Instead, it is our children and grandchildren and their descendants who will be forced to cope with more severe climate disruption. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has said politicians must focus their energy on finding a solution to climate change. Your Holiness has said, quote, sometimes their number one issue of importance is national interest, national economic interest, and then the global warming issue is sometimes second. That, I think, should change. The global issue, it should be number one, unquote. Your Holiness, I look forward to hearing your views on how scientists like us can work more effectively with spiritual leaders and others to help meet this global challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Your Holiness, Chancellor Fox, and distinguished members of the audience, it's my great honor and pleasure to bring you a scientific message of hope. There is a practical and proven way to slow down global warming considerably during our lifetime. In fact, we can cut down the expected warming over the coming decades by almost a half, and thus slow down melting of the glaciers and snowpacks, particularly the Himalayan Tibetan glaciers, which are referred to as the water fountain of Asia because they provide the headwater for most major rivers. We can also slow down sea level rise during this, I'm talking about next few decades to 50 years, and thus provide island nations like the Maldives and Sri Lanka few more decades to adapt to major climate changes, which we heard from Professor Somerville. In fact, this new solution is called mitigation of short-lived climate pollutants. In fact, in my view, this is the first time mitigation of air pollution has emerged as a major way to mitigate climate change, at least in the short term. 2 months ago, the New York Times referred to this as the second front in our fight against climate change. So I'm sure many of you have not heard about this because so far the solution has been buried deep in the hundreds of papers in scientific literature. And the first study, in fact, which started this, was published only in 1975. However, fortunately, 2 months ago, Secretary of State Clinton teamed up with the United Nations and several other nations and formed a coalition to take this agenda forward. 2 weeks ago, President Obama included this solution in his declaration of the North American heads of state. And next week, environmentalists from around the world are going to hear about this solution. So let me tell you what the solution is. Until now, the focus has been primarily on carbon dioxide, necessarily so, from fossil fuels, but that has proven to be impossibly difficult to take any meaningful action. It turns out about 50% of the current global warming is from pollutants other than carbon dioxide. Methane, we are affiliated with natural gas, black carbon in soot, ozone in smog, and halocarbons, which are used as refrigerants and propellants in spray cans. We know how to reduce them drastically. To give one example, California has cut down its black carbon emissions from diesel by 50% in just 20 years. Let me give you another example which links this air pollution to health. Another major source of, should I wait? Yeah. Another major source of black carbon and ozone is cooking with solid biomass, such as dung and firewood. Inhalation of the smoke kills millions of women and children every year. We have tested and developed cleaner cooking stoves, which cuts down this climate warming pollutant significantly. I'm talking about 50 to 70%. If such efforts can be scaled up to the 2.7 billion who have no access to fossil fuel and depend on this biomass, we can save almost 4 million lives every year. So in this new second front in our fight against climate change, all we are asking people and heads of state is please clean up the air. I hope there's no lobby for let's pollute the air more. So in so doing, we will protect the beautiful icons of the planet, the blue skies, our spectacular glaciers, you saw some of them before, and we save lives. More than that, in addition to that, we can save 100 million tons of crop damages every year. So last year, we organized a meeting at the Vatican on behalf of the Holy Father, Pope Benedict. The declaration from the Vatican meeting, which is on the screen, opened my eyes to the vital role that spiritual leaders can play in this war against climate change. For as we all know, it is the spiritual leaders who have the moral authority to remind citizens and their leaders of their universal responsibility to protect the planet's environment. Your Holiness, you did so very eloquently in your recent book, Beyond Religion, Ethics for a Whole World. You devote a whole section to this. And your theme of compassion without borders is a perfect solution for this, because air pollution and atmosphere knows no boundaries. What we pollute here today travels around the world in a matter of days to weeks. So I joined my colleague, Professor Somerville, and say on behalf of this illustrious audience, we are looking forward to your guidance and views on solving this global problem.
Brothers and sisters, of course, respected scientist and also the President.
Vice Chancellor.
Vice Chancellor. Usually, when I give talk, no note, no preparation. Main reason, I'm lazy. I never spend homework. So now here, say, to my colleague, they very well prepared. So perhaps my turn.
So there's a Tibetan expression which is well said, and I agree exactly what you said.
So my own story or experience, when we were in Tibet, we have no idea about the importance of environment or the pollutions. Everything very clean. So for example, when we travel long distance on horse or sometimes yak, when we feel thirst, some river, streams come, immediately we drink. No idea. Same water, one polluted one, you cannot drink. No idea. Then after I came to India, then when you see some people say, this water cannot drink, I'm a little bit surprised. Then gradually, as a result of contact with environmentalists, scientists, then I really developed some kind of very special interest, and also this is not just this academic sort of feeling.
Subject.
This is question of our life,
Our survival.
our survival. Not only individual, but entire planet. If something really goes wrong, then the entire humanity and billions of other species of mammals, it affects. So this is something very, very serious, very serious. I often is telling or expressing, this blue small planet is only our home, no other planet, so far. Perhaps after some time, we may find some suitable planet. Then we can, if this planet really goes hopeless, then may immigrate. But that also just a hope. Difficult, not very sure. So therefore, the only thing is, this is our plan, our home. We have to take care. And that also, another thing, unlike violence, bloodshed, war, also the sort of those starvations. When we saw pictures, in response immediately, how bad, we have to do something. The climate, so this problem, invisibly, isn't it? Once you see, now some big cities, you need some
Mask.
and then you see some irritation in our eyes or some problem, our lungs, particularly those young children. Then maybe too late. I only escape from that area and prefer some other area. So the climate sort of condition, environment things are really very, very serious. So we have to develop serious concern about that through education, through awareness. So here, the scientists like you are truly guru or teacher, make clearer awareness, understanding about the importance of environment. And your sort of, the explanation on the basis of data.
Data, no?
Data.
Yeah, facts.
So, very convincing, very convincing. It is very, very important. So, not further, I mean, some kind of repetition, as you already sort of mentioned, is my sort of expression. They still, we are lacking the full sort of effective cooperation. This is the issue of humanity, not this nation or that nation. Entire planet, for entire planet. So we need the worldwide some kind of movement. This is very essential. So sometimes, like the Denmark or Copenhagen sort of summit, sometimes you see nations consider their own interest is more priority than global issue. So that's actually short-sightedness. No matter one individual country, big, great, but still part of the world. So therefore, it is common interest. Each individual's nations, each individual person's interest. So we have to, so through awareness, educate, more sort of precise, detailed sort of explanation is very, very essential. That I know. Then how to protect, I don't know. You have this sort of ability to show clear sort of instruction or guidance. As I think you mentioned,
for example, you spoke of how we can immediately take measures of reducing the soot release. Yeah.
I have been several occasions, Mongolia, the capital, Ulaanbaatar. Of course, generally cold climate, and then each family is using tosug method.
Coal.
So it's a very thick sort of city, smoke.
Smoke, yeah.
And they say now health viewpoint is not
Dangerous.
good,
No.
dangerous. They say like that. So like that in China, and also in India. I think those area not sort of modern facilities, not yet developed. Then cutting trees and use wood like that. So we, that I think that also related with the economies of development like that. Then usually my sort of main effort is entire humanity. Basically, we are social animal. So each individual's future depends on the rest of the humanity. Particularly nowadays, they not only nation to nation, but also continent to continent, heavily interdependent. So the reality itself now really tell us, show us, we need full sort of cooperation. The cooperation underwater, difficult. Cooperation based on clear realization, we are one, oneness of humanity. Here, the sense of global responsibility. With that, once you see we develop oneness of humanity, then among us, trust respect come. Without trust, how can develop friendship? Without friendship, how can develop genuine, meaningful cooperation? So ultimately, realize the 7 billion human beings, same human being, everyone have right to overcome suffering. So from one individual, how can I make some contribution regarding better of the world, better humanity? In order to develop that sort of attitude, if you keep extreme self-centered attitude and short-sightedness, then no bother about what happening. Just think oneself. That's short-sighted. Actually, we are part of that. So for our own interest, we have to take care about the rest of the world. So through education, through awareness, my own sort of part, I always try to make clear,
Promote love.
promote some kind of sense of concern of well-being of rest of the humanity, rest of the sentient being on this planet. And then for that, you need some kind of sense of oneness, humanity, and sense of global responsibility. Then Sudesh Bala told me many years ago, but almost I think the first period of my sort of contact with scientists, then Bob Livingston. Oh, wonderful scientist, wonderful person. So not only my close friend, but also I learned a lot from him. So he...
Bob Livingston was from the University of California, San Diego.
Yeah, he told me. So some special connection. So I always remember him. Such a nice person, now no longer with us. He also very much committed about peace and ending nuclear, like that. So he told me once, about 20,000 doctors about sort of some movement against nuclear weapon, like that. So one time he expressed he want invite me to their meeting in Hiroshima, but that didn't materialize. Like that. So I'm very happy. So now some discussions, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some questions from audience?
No questions.
Okay.
There's some too.
Okay.
Shall I? Okay. So this is from Jeff Sherman. Throughout civilization's history, we have been at conflict. Governments, religions, politics, business, even academia. Although conflict can spark creativity, it fails for problems requiring global cooperation. So how can societies shift perspectives from conflict-driven to cooperation-driven policies?
I think awareness, education. I think, for example, in previous century, in early part of 20th century, nobody talks about environment, importance of environment. Through awareness, now awareness much sort of increase. And then I think in the early part of 20th century, I think sense of coexistence.
Right.
I think not there. Then after Second World War, 2 blocks with a nuclear weapon. So in some extent, I think a nuclear weapon worked deterrent. So the concept of the coexistence. You see, these things happen. Totally different system, different ideology, but share same planet, share peace, So therefore, live together. So these things, you see. And then I always admire the spirit of European Union. In previously, these member states fought for their own sovereignty of these things. Then I think under the leadership of Adenauer, then West Germany, and then I think de Gaulle, France, I think under leadership, mainly leadership of these two, the European Union, developed. I think these are through awareness. The common economic interest is more important for a long run than individual currency. Look, German Deutschmark, very strong. But they consider the common interest is more important than their national. I mean, national interest also related with that. So these are through education, through awareness, thinking widened. So these things. Now I think, obviously, some sort of sensible person, I think, automatically come to in their mind some question: what is wrong? Our existing sort of way of life. Yes, prosperity. Every year, some development. Now, recent few years, you are facing some problems. And also Europe. In Europe, the euro crisis, quite serious. And here, America, also some problems. I think now, some improvement, economic condition now, some improvement, isn't it? Yeah. Improvement, isn't it? Improving. So you simply, you see, consider your sort of a big building, a big house, there's a big car, and a big salary, then feel, oh, that is the meaning of life. No, certainly not. So you see, among my friend, seems to somehow quite very rich, maybe billionaire, but as an individual, very unhappy person. Then the question comes, why? Plenty of money. Because of that money, it's quite because of fame.
Famous slum.
And a lot of sort of artificial friends there. But still the person fail bring inner peace. Why? So we must we must use human intelligence to put some questions, to bring questions. That's, I think, very, very important. You should not take for granted. We have everything. Now this go continuously. I think that's a mistake. Time is changing. The reality is changing. One of the factors is human population increasing. Now that's a very serious matter. Very serious matter. So usually I half joke, you see, sort of expressing. We need genuine, non-violent birth control is necessary. That is more monks, more nuns. So the population, rapidly increasing population now, that is very, very serious matter. Very serious matter. Then our lifestyle have to think very seriously. This big question. And still, same planet, same human being, one part of the world, same planet, facing starvation. Not adequate, basic needs. Some other surplus, difficult. Same human being, same right. So we have to think very seriously these things. If the present sort of way of thinking continuously, I think sooner or later we will face some problems. We have to think according to the new sort of new change, new reality. We have to think. That's my view. So through education, through awareness, we can change our mind.
권한이 이송해면
Then YouTube. Question. Answer for this question. Repeat 조금 더.
We agree with you wholeheartedly.
근데 가능성과 대대신은 Maybe you can take the next one. Yeah. This is from Rick Thomas. The short-term political and economic interests of countries and corporations often appear to overwhelm global cooperation on long-term environmental issues. Do you think there is a way, or indeed a need, to change political thinking or framework to include greater consideration of the natural world?
Yes, I do think so. And I think if we think about why the political process has been so slow and so ineffective in many ways in doing what needs to be done, I think it's because we have to educate our political leaders and tell them that this is important. When polling data in this country and many other countries shows that the environment, climate rank very low compared to things like economic prosperity, national security, education, then we find that politicians can conveniently ignore it. So I ask people who take this issue seriously to tell their politicians that it's important to them. We have a democratic government and politicians react to pressure from voters. So that's one piece of advice.
Yes, I think that's an excellent question. I, as a natural scientist, I'm always puzzled when I go to these international meetings. The economics and environment are seen as competing with each other. And there may be multidimensional issue, but some of the blame maybe has to be shared by the scientists for this, because when we talk about climate change, we normally talk about what's going to happen 100 years from now. So it gives the economists to say, do you want to take that benefit now or wait for 100 years? But what we are finding, the climate change is happening now. And I gave an example, and His Holiness talked about sharing. You know, we have left behind 2.7 billion people behind. They have no access. They don't even know what fossil fuel is. And so, but yet the smoke from the stoves settles on the Himalayas in addition to the lungs. So the health and climate are so connected. And they're happening now. 80% of the Himalayan glaciers are melting. The Alps has lost about 60% of its ice mass. So we have kind of need to work on telling people they're happening now. And the scientists focus on 100 years from now because we are worried about Greenland glacier melting, because that would be an unmitigated catastrophe. So we need to sensitize our economists. I hope there are members from our economics department here. The changes are happening now. So I think that awareness hopefully would take this argument not competing with each other, but we are working together.
Nothing.
So this is
Maybe, I think one sort of mistake, we so far up to now, we simply sort of because of the because of the material values. And then modern education itself seems to be oriented about economy, the concern, material sort of concern. not talking about our inner value. So the problem may be, I often see expressing, may be wrong or may be right. In the European continent, the separate education institutions started, like Bologna University in Italy. I was told more than 1,000 years old. So when that separate education institution started, then the moral ethics taken care by church. So quite well sort of balanced. Now modern time, the influence of the church in reality, a little bit sort of decline. So the newly developed separate education institution. Now actually that institution alone should take care because of the brain development as well as development of warm-heartedness. Then the big question, how to introduce in education field these ethics, how to educate. Some my friend believe ethics, moral principle, ethics must be based on religious faith. Then multi-religion society, difficult. And also including non-believers there. That's why India, I think at least more than 2,000 years, the secularism, according Indian sort of understanding, not sort of against religion or disrespect religion, but rather respect all religions. And then also including non-believer. In India, more than 2,000 years, certain sort of school of thought denying existence of
life after death.
I think existence of spirituality, simply day by day's life and material value, nothing. So that the Indian literature called that school of thought is nihilism. Yet, you see, the rest of the sort of different school of thought criticize that school of thought as a nihilism, Charvaka, Indian language, Charvaka. However, the person who holds that view refer Rishi. Rishi means sage. So that indicates respect. Even those people who deny the value of spirituality, still respect. Criticize their view, but respect. So, according Indian tradition, respect, secularism also respect non-believer. So, I always say, I am very much impressed with secularism. Respect all religion, no preference in this religion or that religion, and also non-believer, they're also part of humanity. So therefore, they it's a compassion without border. So those non-believers, also human brothers, sisters, we have to sort of respect them. We have to take serious concern about their well-being. So, in education, you see, about the spirituality or inner value, compassion, these things, the way sort of educate these things, not related with religion. Because, you see, no matter how one religion, wonderful religion, but still it never be universal, isn't it? So we, in education, now many countries in Europe, in America, also it's a secular education. So we find ways and means to how to introduce in modern education about these values So education itself now not simply oriented material value, but internal values combined. Then from kindergarten up to university level, you see, such sort of education, well balanced, concern about material value, concerning about internal value, go together, then perhaps we can. And then televisions or radios or newspaper, these also, you see, should take active role promoting these values. Then I think next generation, maybe more generation who have more holistic view. Then leadership come from that kind of sort of society will be different. But up to now, our society also, you see, always talk money, 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 money. That's all, isn't it? Individually, yes, some interest about spirituality. But this also is not very serious. And Sunday church, where? Church Sunday service, is attend there. Few moments, close your eye, and remember God. But outside, nothing. We Indians, I think millions of Indians also, in each home, some guy sort of recite some shloka, Sanskrit, without chanting, without knowing the meaning, and not very serious. Then outside, whenever you find opportunity, corruptions, don't care. So these people actually not very serious religious practitioner, isn't it? So I think that is, like here you see one university, I think professors or specialist educationists, I think should carry some research work. Now whether this existing education system is really adequate or not. People who grown up through such education system, we find something lacking. That is clear. So shaping human mind through education, through awareness, through education. So education should be something complete. That's my view. Of course, as far as my own concern, the modern education is
Solins was saying that as far as he's personally concerned that when it comes to modern education, he doesn't know a thing about it.
So it is quite kasoda.
So making comments about the shortcomings of modern education system, coming from someone who has no idea about what modern education system is, may seem a bit presumptuous.
But I think everybody can see symptom, something lacking with that, negligence. Yes. Now, next question.
There was one question which was, this is from Christine Schulz. How do you see environmental conservation coexisting or complementing more human-centered goals, such as lifting people out of poverty?
I think that there are many things that are technologically possible that we haven't yet as a people, as the world, found the political will to do, but if they were done, there would be a lot of benefits, including lifting people out of poverty, because there are technically many exciting possibilities, both available at present and likely to be available in the future if we work toward them. I'm thinking of all the means of energy conservation, energy efficiency, clean energy of various kinds, switching to renewable fuels, because when you do them, you help the planet, you help the climate, but you also save money. you reduce the need for armies and protecting oil routes and spending money abroad. And so it helps the balance of payments, it helps the air quality where you live, and it creates jobs. It has many, many benefits. And for people who think things can't change, there are many examples. There are countries where renewable energy has skyrocketed in percentage of use. France went off fossil fuel electricity in 1 generation. And I'm convinced that change is possible when people want it. You can talk about how resistant the political system is, but in this country, 100 years ago, we didn't have an income tax, and now everybody thinks it's normal. So if that kind of change can happen so that you're subsidizing good behavior, penalizing bad behavior, I'm optimistic from what technology can do, and guardedly optimistic about what will politically be possible.
Yeah, so I wanted to pick up the theme of the link between environmental conservation and the type of climate change we are talking about, and poverty. So I want to go back to what I call the left behind 2.7 billion, and the firewood and cow dung they use. I know this because my grandmother used to cook with biomass fuels. And Your Holiness, you correctly and beautifully pointed out the firewood comes from deforestation, trees. That alone puts about 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide. And then I'm talking about this soot in the black carbon. There have been recent work, many groups have shown, this black carbon settles on the Himalayan glaciers and may be contributing as much as 50%. And the same with Arctic sea ice. So this is a classic problem. Why are these 2.7 billion using this? Not because they want to destroy the planet, they just can't afford anything else. And in this project I was mentioning, we have found a $30 to $40 stove. It has to be energy efficient with a forced draft fan. Takes care of most of the problem. And to provide this $40 stove to the whole 2.7 billion is a $10 billion problem. Climate, we are talking about trillions of dollars to solve that problem. So that is where we are hopeful, linking that cook stoves with air pollution and climate change and glacier melt. They may be able to access the climate financing funds and solve a problem which as society we should have solved 50, 100 years ago. So I'm just giving you one example. There are many, many such examples where you help those who are impoverished and they have no access to ours, give them cleaner access, would address many of the issues.
So this question is from Brian.
Although I think maybe impractical, the Baba Amte near Nagpur. I visited his sort of as a colony, his sort of center. Wonderful, wonderful. So I was told their member, when they die, usually it's burned. They're usually burned. So their member in that colony, someone died, and sort of they got a rag
Wrap it up in a cloth.
and then buried not burning, not burned. And then plant one tree. So after a few decades, that body was assimilated
With the
to
tree.
the earth. And memory about that, that person, one tree. I think that kind of a practice, so otherwise you see millions of people because of burn,
Burnt, yeah.
a lot of sort of
Few,
few like that. And they what's say,
Varanasi.
the
Ganges.
Ganges,
Ganga.
few times I passed through, not justice, go some, let's say,
Tourist, But that's a pilgrimage.
some prayer or something. So the other side burning that body. So sometimes a lot of smoke and also bad smell. Like that. Then the ashes of that body, you see, thrown into the water. So I think some blessing to fish like that. Sometimes, you see, it is our traditional sort of habit. We must respect. But at the same time, we have to think today's reality. Although it is part of our own sort of tradition or like caste system or tradition, but now today's sort of reality, we have to change something, these things. I think in many other traditions, I think so we can't say it is our sort of way of life. We can't say that. We have to think about the reality. What benefit, what harmfulness. That's very, very important.
This question is from Brian Palaniuk. Does an ethical response of humans to an environmental problem depend on the potential consequences of the problem? In other words, does the potential seriousness of a problem affect the ethical dimension of the response? And do different religions treat this question differently? No.
As I mentioned before, I think everybody want a nice house and taking care about the house. That not necessarily we consider unless you take care of the house got some kind of pain. No. Just this is my house. So in order to you live comfortably, you have to take care about the furniture, about the building, house or environment, right?
Yeah.
Some garden, some flowers. So that view, even I think birds, when they nest, they're really taking full care about their small nest. Sometimes I think we human beings, if you make that kind of nest, I think it's difficult. The small birds, they really beautifully, they construct their nest, isn't it? Yeah. So these, not necessarily, they respect the nest, but their own sort of youngsters' sort of survival depend on that. So that is it, that view or that sort of
Understanding.
that understanding, expand. Then whole planet is our home. We have to take care. So this is not
So it's not a religious matter.
Mm. Yeah. Then religious thing, I think, one my Muslim friend, he publicly sort of expressed, a genuine Islam practitioner should extend love, compassion towards entire creatures because you respect Allah. So then, that same, the Christian also, I think, So you see, the same logic, this beautiful planet created by God. So we must take care. It is wrong just to exploit as much as possible without care. It's wrong. So I think because of the children
So of course we can draw from the resources of the religious tradition to further reinforce our commitment to this kind of responsibility.
But for me, more convincing is scientific explanation. That's more convincing, no question.
So this is actually a question for you, Your Holiness. This is from Sarah Gordon. And she says, this question is for His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, because I ask, in part, how to maintain patience and a sense of calm during difficult times. For example, how do you suggest that we as citizens who trust that climate change is happening at a dangerous rate engage in a meaningful discussion with those who disbelieve and have preconceived notions and create temper and strong emotion and make it hard to explain the science in a rational way?
그래서 보신다 지금. 또 두메치즈는 아직 스웨센다 아직 샘시디 근데 소도 벌써 뒤심.
지단다 무시 되어들으셔 되나 모당 뭐 잡았는데 딱한다 즉 점을 지 남시기 자세도 교수님 두고 여버진 좀 원래체 지기 어떨 나는 원래 마신이 메어 봐. 무슨 보게 시직 체백을 하네 롱말아야 한다 되거든요. 남주 배주제 콘솔 밖에 시에 답람으로 가려요 나스. 네 이제 마신이
I think that depends on the basic sort of mental attitude towards that person. If you have, now for example, when I come across, this is some sort of difficult person. Firstly, I recognize that also another human brother, sister. We have to respect. So there are different views. We have to respect. We have to listen with respect, their view. And then meantime, with that kind of attitude, if necessary, some argument. And very pleasant argument. Right? Oh. So, when we carrying some debate, very serious argument. Sometimes you see the one panna, face may become red, very serious. But you see, in deeper level, no sort of negative feeling. So after that sort of because of the serious debate, disagreement, then you see even joke.
So His Holiness is here talking about the experience of traditional monastic debates, which is part of the education system.
I think many, as I mentioned, those Nalanda masters, these logicians and philosophers, serious debate. Sometimes they use a little sort of harsh word also. But you see, in deeper feeling, respect each other, no problem. So I think when someone confront, you see different views, listen, respect. And then some sort of friendly argument. We have to take for granted the billions of humanity, different views. Once the Bob Livingston, you see, told me at that time 6 billion human beings. So he mentioned 6 billion human beings have a sort of 6 billion different views about the world. It is very true. It's very true. That take for granted. So naturally, there are different views. It's automatically come. So you I think if you sort of too much sort of I think self-centered, my view is 100% right. So then others, different views, then feel some uncomfortable feel. That's, I think, narrow-mindedness. Think, oh, very possible, different views. I think now maybe because of the unrelated, but I may usually I used to talking to people within, let's say, the Buddha's teaching. I mean, different explanation about the reality. So there are different, let's say, the explanation. Explanation come from one person, that's Buddha Shakyamuni. Looks contradiction. So I usually say telling people that is a contradictory philosophy come from same person, not necessarily his own confusion in his own mind. No. No, he deliberately tried to create more confusion among his follower. He deliberately taught contradictory philosophy, contradictory views. That also no. So then answer is, among his own follower, there are many different sort of mental sort of disposition. So Buddha need talk different views according to different mental dispositions people, like that. So it's understandable. I think take for granted different views and then respect. If you, through talk, through little argument, if you win, then that's your victory. If not win, okay, accept that. No need some kind of because of the different feeling there. And then also that there were
And also, there might be times where you cannot do really much at all. So in such situations, it would be useful to remember the advice of an 8th century Buddhist master who said, with respect to a problem, if there is a solution, there is no need to be overwhelmed, worry about it. And if there is no solution, then there is no point in worrying about it.
So that's very practical, very realistic approach, isn't it? So that's, for me, you see, that sort of suggestion is very, very helpful to maintain your peace of mind.
So this will be the final question. It's from Rachel Schwartz. Are you optimistic that we will rise to the challenge and deal successfully with climate change? What is your definition of successful in this case? Have we already failed from, say, a biodiversity or deforestation point of view? What do you think is the underlying foundation to the resistance against accepting the science and making changes to mitigate climate change? How can I, as an individual, convey to others how this is an ethical issue? So there are many questions here.
Well,
Maybe sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
I'll just give a small introduction, and then Richard and His Holiness can continue. I take my own personal example. When I started working in this field about 35 years ago, only my wife would come to my talk. Now I see this audience, and His Holiness correctly said, the awareness of environment has exploded. So I have nothing but optimism. Society will solve this problem. We just have to help them a little bit.
Yeah.
Oma kana kui to ke share ta la ya ni sta yo ma res. Rinda kun ni kana mana sing rinda rinda ni samu tuwa ta je ti stu kan. Kran dan optimistic years. Then much it.
I'm optimistic too. I find that when people question the science, of course, the science is never complete and science doesn't give you certainty, but when people question the things that we're really quite well established, the world is warming, it's not due to the sun, it's not a natural cycle, and so on, they're often concerned not about climate science, but about the policies that they think might be put in place if the science were taken seriously. So people whose real objections come from core values in which they might oppose taxes or government interference in free markets or ceding national sovereignty by signing treaties, will sometimes disguise those concerns, which are legitimate concerns, with questioning the science. And I think it's useful to separate the science. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but not to their own facts. And so... I think I'm learning Tibetan. So I think a great deal can be done if you depoliticize the discussion and say, you know, there aren't any Republican or Democratic thermometers and satellites aren't liberal or conservative, and then you can make some progress. And I'm optimistic too, because there are smart things that can be done, and we've talked about some of them, but there are intelligent things that have many benefits that are really worth doing. And I like to think about the comment of an oil minister from Saudi Arabia who was being asked about peak oil and when we would run out of fossil fuels and so on, and he said, you know, the Stone Age did not end because we ran out of stones. So I take comfort in that, and I hope that we get smarter sooner.
Now what else? Why I develop genuine respect, admiration about the science and scientists. Because our every sort of activities, every activities, I think the activities which aiming some goal, then that activities or that action should be realistic action. Action carried mainly your wish, your desire, may not achieve. So your goal, you want something, but your action or effort must be realistic. Then the realistic approach will produce satisfactory result. Unrealistic sort of effort bring sometimes disaster. Any sort of any goal, right? Or global level, or national level, family level, individual level. So in order to know the reality, in order to carry realistic approach, you must know the reality. In order to know the reality, there are always gap, appearances and reality. So we should not confuse on the level of appearances. We must carry research about the reality. That also not one through one dimension, 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions, 6 dimensions. Then you will know the reality better. So scientists they carry research. What's the reality? Sometimes maybe specialist just one dimension, isn't it? But one scientist, you see, carry research from that dimension. Another one, you see, carry research from that dimension. Together, full picture. That's the way. So, and also, it's a scientist mind, I found, very open mind, and remain skeptical. Skepticism. Skepticism, very necessary. Skeptical attitude brings question. Question brings research. Research or analyze. Analysis brings answer. Without sort of skepticism, no question. No question, no research. No research, you can't find the reality. So, and meantime, the scientists is never imposing their own wish. Just neutral, open mind, and carry research. So therefore, I respect, I admire those scientists. Maybe some scientists may be a little bit narrow-minded, except only their own field. No others, that is some exceptional. But otherwise, I really find Kasoda admiration. So now my point is, research is very, very essential, very essential. Analyze things. The reality, there are many levels. You can't satisfy on the level of superficial level. Must go deeper, deeper, deeper. Then you get the deeper understanding. Then dealing with that, either positive or negative, anything, you see, with full sort of understanding about the reality. Even you want to do some harms to other, first you should know the reality, find out their weak point, then hit on it. Then that becomes much more effective, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you much.